In 2003, a music video was released that Trent Reznor, the man who wrote the song, watched and then said quietly, "That's not my song anymore." The song was Hurt. Reznor had written it in 1994 for his band 9 Inch Nails, a raw, visceral examination of self-destruction and isolation that the industrial rock audience received as one of the defining statements of the decade. It was a young man's song written from inside the specific darkness of a young man's despair, and it was extraordinarily good at being exactly that. Then Johnny Cash recorded it. He was 71 years old. His hand shook slightly when he played the guitar. His voice had changed in the specific way that voices change when the body carrying them has been through what his body had been through. Lower, rougher, carrying a weight that no amount of studio production could manufacture because it was not produced by a studio, but by 7 decades of living. The video that accompanied the recording showed Cash at a piano in the House of Cash, the museum he had built to house his memorabilia, now in disrepair, the artifacts of a 50-year career gathering dust in rooms that time had not been kind to. June was there briefly, her face carrying the specific expression of a woman watching the man she loves do something she recognizes as important. The video ended with Cash alone. It was not a performance of aging and mortality, it was aging and mortality, recorded honestly by a man whose entire career had been built on the specific quality of not pretending that things are other than what they are. Trent Reznor watched it and understood that he had written a song that had found its final, definitive version, not in the hands of the young man who wrote it from inside despair, but in the hands of the old man who had lived long enough to know exactly what the despair was about. This is episode 6, American Recordings, the resurrection that nobody predicted, and the ending that was always going to be exactly this. Rick Rubin's living room in Los Angeles is not a recording studio in any conventional sense. There is no mixing board. There are no isolation booths. There is no rack of outboard gear or wall of vintage microphones or any of the other equipment that professional music production has accumulated over decades of technological refinement. There is a couch. There is a chair. There is a microphone on a stand. There is an acoustic guitar. And there are 2 men, one 61 years old from Kingsland, Arkansas, carrying 50 years of music in his hands, and one 30 years old from Long Beach, New York, carrying a specific, informed love for what the older man has always been, sitting across from each other trying to figure out what to make. Rubin's pitch is simple enough to state and radical enough in context to require explanation. He wants to record Johnny Cash the way Sam Phillips recorded Johnny Cash in 1954, stripped of everything that the intervening decades of production have added, returned to the essential elements, the voice, the guitar, the songs. No Nashville production, no strings, no backing vocalists, no drum machines or synthesizers or any of the sonic furniture that the commercial music industry has decided that a record needs in order to sound like a record. Just the man and the music in a room with a microphone running. The concept is not new in the abstract sense. Folk music has always operated on this principle, and the acoustic revival of the early 1990s has created a context in which the stripped-back approach is more commercially viable than it was a decade earlier. What is new is the specific application of the concept to Johnny Cash in 1993. The specific bet that the voice and the songs and the man placed in front of a microphone with nothing else will produce something that the production-heavy country records of the previous 2 decades have made invisible. Cash listens. He has nothing to lose in the specific way of someone who has already lost the things he was most afraid of losing: the label, the commercial relevance, the institutional validation that the industry provides when it finds you useful. He has the voice, he has the songs, he has the specific quality of absolute honesty that has characterized everything he has ever made when he was making it at his best. He agrees. They begin recording in Rubin's living room with the specific informality of 2 people who are not trying to make a record that sounds like the records being made in 1993, but are trying instead to make something that sounds like what it is. A man in a room with a guitar, singing songs he has something real to say about. Cash plays songs that span his entire career, Sun Records, era material, songs written in the intervening decades, newer compositions, cover songs selected by both Cash and Rubin for what they can do with the voice and the arrangement they have agreed to use. The recording sessions are not quick or effortless. Cash's hands are less reliable than they were in 1954. The arthritis that has been building for years, producing the specific, frustrating gap between what the mind hears and what the fingers can execute. He plays through it. The imperfection in the playing is not a problem. It is in the specific aesthetic of what they are making, the point. The record is not supposed to sound like technical perfection. It is supposed to sound true. American Recordings is released in April 1994 and lands in the music world with the specific, disorienting impact of something that does not belong to any current trend and therefore cannot be assessed by any current framework. The country establishment does not know what to do with it. The record is not produced in Nashville, does not sound like anything Nashville is currently producing, and was made by an artist that Nashville spent the better part of a decade ignoring. The critical establishment, the rock critics, the cultural journalists, the people whose job is to assess new music and determine its significance, receives it with the stunned attention of people encountering something they did not expect. The reviews are extraordinary, not the polite appreciation of a major artist's late career effort, the critical equivalent of a standing ovation for someone whose best work is behind them, but the genuine, specific, detailed engagement of critics who are hearing something they recognize as important. The American Recordings album is called one of the most significant recordings of the decade. It wins the Grammy for Best Contemporary Folk Album. It introduces Johnny Cash to an audience that was not born when Folsom Prison Blues was recorded and that receives the voice and the songs as if they are new, which in important ways they are. The same artist, the same essential qualities, but placed in a context that makes them audible to ears that the country radio of the previous 20 years had trained to expect something entirely different. Cash performs the album's release at the South by Southwest Music Festival in Austin, a gathering of the American independent music scene, the natural habitat of exactly the young audience that Rick Rubin understood the record could reach. The performance is not the act of an older artist attempting to seem relevant by appearing in a young person's context. It is the act of an artist whose music has always been more honest than commercial radio allowed, performing for an audience whose relationship to music is organized around exactly the quality of honesty that he has always provided. The audience at South by Southwest receives him with the specific enthusiasm of people discovering something that they understand immediately to be real. They are not listening to the man in black as a cultural artifact. They are listening to Johnny Cash as a living artist whose voice communicates something that the music they have been listening to has not communicated, whose songs about darkness and faith and the condemned and the forgotten address human conditions that do not become obsolete with the passage of time. The American Recordings Project continues. Unchained follows in 1996, produced by Rubin with the backing of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, the same essential concept expanded to include electric instrumentation while maintaining the directness and the honesty of the first record. American 3, Solitary Man arrives in 2000. American 4, The Man Comes Around in 2002. The album that contains the Hurt recording and that represents, in retrospect, the final full artistic statement of one of the most complete careers in American music. Each album in the series reveals something about the voice that the previous decade's recordings obscured. The voice is different from what it was in 1955 or 1968 or 1982, and lower, rougher, carrying the specific weight of everything the body and the life have deposited in it. But it is more itself than it has ever been, in the specific way that voices become more themselves as the performative elements fall away, and what remains is what was always there underneath. The voice that Sam Phillips heard in 1954 and understood was unlike anything else is still there. It is just older now, and the age is not a diminishment, but an addition, the same instrument carrying more. The Hurt video is released in early 2003 and produces a response unlike anything in the history of music video. Not the response of a viral moment, the sudden saturation of a media cycle that burns bright and disappears, but the specific sustained generational response of something that has touched something real and does not wear out its welcome because what it touched is permanent. The video is directed by Mark Romanek, who approaches the project with the understanding that the correct visual language for this recording is not performance footage or narrative storytelling, but documentary, the honest recording of an old man in a deteriorating space doing what he has always done, surrounded by the physical evidence of what the doing has produced and what time has done to it. The House of Cash, which is where the video is filmed, is in the process of flooding. The structure compromised, the exhibits damaged, the artifacts of 50 years of one of the most important careers in American music being claimed by moisture and gravity in the specific way that physical things are claimed when the attention required to maintain them is no longer available. Cash's failing health has made the maintenance impossible. The house is dying the way he is dying. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in the slow, incremental way of things that have been sustained by a specific energy and are now being released from it. The video places Cash at a grand piano in the House of Cash. He plays. He sings. The lyrics of Hurt, Reznor's meditation on self-destruction and isolation, the question of what remains when the substances and the numbing and the specific strategies of avoidance have been exhausted, arrive in Cash's voice as something categorically different from what they were in 1994. Not because the lyrics have changed, but because the man singing them has lived what the lyrics describe, and has arrived at 71, at the specific vantage point of someone who can sing about darkness with the authority of someone who has been in it, and come out, and been in it again, and come out again, and is now, finally, at a sufficient distance to describe it clearly. June appears briefly. She is not in good health. Her face carries the specific quality of someone who is present through an effort of will rather than through physical ease, who has been showing up for so long that showing up has become the organizing principle of her existence, regardless of what it requires. She watches Cash at the piano with the expression that has been her expression for 40 years. The complete, clear-eyed, undefended love of someone who sees what they love and does not look away. The video ends. Cash is alone. The house is damaged around him. The artifacts of the career are visible and deteriorating. The piano sits in the center of it all. Trent Reznor watches the video and says, "I hope you understand that this song isn't mine anymore." He means it as the highest compliment available in music. He is saying that the performance has so completely claimed the material that the original version is now the cover, that what Cash did with the song is the final, definitive version against which all previous and future versions will be measured. The response to the video is immediate and global and generational in the specific sense that it reaches audiences who have no prior relationship to Johnny Cash and who receive it as the introduction to an artist they will spend the rest of their lives listening to. Rock audiences, hip-hop audiences, country audiences, audiences in countries where American country music has no commercial presence, but where the specific human experience of the lyrics and the specific quality of the voice that delivers them translate without loss across any linguistic or cultural barrier. May 15th, 2003. June Carter Cash dies after complications from heart valve surgery. She is 73 years old. She has been the center of Johnny Cash's life for 35 years. Not in the sense that she replaced everything else, but in the sense that everything else was organized around her presence the way a solar system is organized around a star. The music was better because she was there. The sobriety was possible because she managed it. The faith was deepened because she practiced it beside him. The House of Cash was the house it was because she tended it. The life after the cave was the life it was because she made it. She is gone in the morning after the surgery in the specific sudden way of things that are expected to be survivable and are not. Johnny is with her. He goes home to Hendersonville. He sits in the house that she tended for 35 years. He picks up the guitar. He records 60 songs in the 4 months between June's death and his own. The house without June is the specific physical reality of an absence that everything was organized around. The rooms that she tended are the same rooms. The furniture is where she placed it. The kitchen that she cooked in is the kitchen it has always been. The garden is dormant in the summer heat, the same garden that she maintained with the specific daily attention of someone who understood that tending living things is its own form of prayer. Everything is where it was. The person who made it all means something is not. He does not wait for the grief to subside before picking up the guitar. This is not stoicism or denial or the specific performance of strength that public figures sometimes deploy in the face of private loss. It is simply who he is. The guitar has always been the place he goes when the interior life requires expression that ordinary speech cannot provide. Since the Dias farmhouse, since the barracks in Germany, since the first songs written before anyone was listening. He goes there now because it is where he has always gone, and because the going is necessary, and because June, who understood him better than anyone, would have expected nothing different. This is not prolific in the casual sense. 60 songs in 4 months is the pace of a man who understands that time is finite and who has things to say that cannot wait for a more convenient schedule. The recordings are raw in the way that recordings made by a man in grief are raw. Not the managed rawness of an artistic choice, but the actual, unmanaged rawness of someone who is working through the worst thing that has happened to him by doing the only thing that has always worked, which is picking up the guitar and singing about what is true. The recordings include gospel songs and love songs and songs about mortality and songs about the specific quality of absence, the particular silence of rooms that have always contained a specific presence and that now do not. He sings about June. He sings about faith and doubt and the question of whether the presence he felt in the Nickajack cave was real and whether it persists and whether it is sufficient to the specific grief of losing the person who made the life after the cave worth living. The recordings are not all great in the technical sense. They are great in the only sense that matters for this particular man at this particular moment. They are true. They are the unfiltered expression of what Johnny Cash is at 71 years old, 4 months before his own death, in the specific condition of grief and faith and physical decline and the accumulated weight of a life that contained more than most lives and that is now, clearly and irreversibly, approaching its ending. He performs one final concert in July 2003 at the Carter Family Fold in Hiltons, Virginia, the venue associated with June's family. The specific geography of where the Carter family began and where the Cash Carter story had its deepest roots. He is visibly unwell. He shakes. The voice that has carried everything for 50 years is struggling with what the body is now struggling to provide. He plays anyway. He sings anyway. He performs with the specific, complete commitment of a man who understands that this may be the last time and who is not going to give the last time anything less than everything. The audience at the Carter Family Fold watches and knows they are watching something that will not happen again. They are correct. On September 12th, 2003, 4 months and 28 days after June Carter Cash died, Johnny Cash dies at Baptist Hospital in Nashville from complications of diabetes. He is 71 years old. He is buried beside June in Hendersonville, Tennessee, in the specific proximity that their lives always required and that death does not reduce. The final recordings, produced in the months after June's death, some of them released on American 5, 100 Highways in 2006, and American 6, Ain't No Grave in 2010, are received by the audience that the American recording series built as the final chapters of the most complete artistic statement in American music, not the statement of a man summarizing his career, but the statement of a man continuing the work until the work was no longer possible. He did not stop. He kept playing. He kept singing. He kept telling the truth about what he saw. Episode 7, Hurt, the complete legacy. Why Johnny Cash matters more now than when he was alive, and what the man in black left behind for the people he always wore the black for. This is Legends of America.